Welcome to the Drive-By Entrepreneur Podcast, which exists to bring current and compelling content to entrepreneurs and influencers of small to mid-sized organizations. I'm John Frank, fellow entrepreneur and the owner of Third Road Management. And with this podcast, we will connect with a variety of experienced and dynamic individuals to shed some light on both the art and science of entrepreneurship. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors. First, my very own Third Road Management, a company that brings fractional CFO services to small and mid-sized organizations by revolutionizing the CFO suite. We'd also like to thank Two Hound Red, a brewery and restaurant located in Glen Ellen, Illinois, that is focused on creating classic, innovative beer and food. And finally, we'd like to thank NWC Media, which provides inbound marketing technology, project workflow management, and efficiency consulting to organizations of varied sizes, who is also the producer of the Drive-By Entrepreneur podcast. All right, Bobby Duncan.
Hey.
Welcome to the podcast. Honored to have you on here. I'm really excited to jump in and personally get to know you better, even though we're friends and we go back a long way, but also just dive in more on your background and your history and the type of work you do. So
yeah, super excited to be here. Appreciate the invitation and look forward to our conversation.
I love it. I love it. I always start out just, level setting a little bit about like, why do you do this, right? Because, I have another job. I'm not a podcaster by trade, kind of thing, but I have this, sort of mission statement that to bring current and compelling content to entrepreneurs and influencers of small to mid-sized organizations. So lion's share of people that are on here are entrepreneurs like you and like me. And, there's more stories. How did you start this? Why did you start this? What have you experienced along the way? And I think that there's something special to hearing those stories and hearing about how people have persevered through challenges, or there's always an opportunity to learn, right? At the end of the day.
Of course, yeah.
The other piece of it would be any sort of subject matter experts that, have professionally something to add to that entrepreneurial world. Those are the other guests that are kind of on the show, but
sure,
we have a blast with it. And definitely think, you're going to add a lot to that pile of wisdom, so to speak, that we've accumulated.
Big shoes to fill.
Yeah, very good. All right. So a little bit about you. You're the founder of Duncan Law Group. Over 11 years old. You founded it in 2011. Your practice areas include class action, personal injury, medical malpractice, and wrongful death, among a couple other things. Your firm has recovered over $100 million in compensation for your clients, which is done completely on a contingency basis.
True.
My personal level, fellow U of I grad. So
indeed, go Illini.
We've had quite a few. We've had a little run of Illini on the program here.
Nothing wrong with that. Good people.
I gotta mix it up a little bit, but not too much, right? The number of awards on the website is crazy that you've accumulated over your years as an attorney, which is awesome. You're actively involved in the community and still find to be a great dad and a great husband. So,
wow. Thank you. Hopefully my wife doesn't.
I'll send a questionnaire home.
Yes.
No, awesome. Anyway, I say all that stuff just because, I know you're an extremely humble guy. You wouldn't necessarily, bring that out there, but I did a little hunting around on the website and found some of that information, so I could say it for you.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. So again, out of the gates, one of the things that I like to do the most is I'm just always intrigued by people's story. And I know a little bit about yours, but not probably, the whole story. So, obviously, you've been leading this law firm now for almost 15 years, but, take us on the journey, go as far back as you want to go, whether it be, childhood or high school or college or whatever, that sort of encapsulates your story of how you got here, and take us along the journey. And I'll probably have some questions along the way, but why don't we start there?
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting because my dad was a lawyer and a judge here in DuPage County. So he
Yeah.
became a judge when I was 10 years old. And so people always think like, oh, you probably always wanted to be a lawyer and, following your dad's footsteps. And it just was never the case.
Hmm.
I ended up going down to U of I and studying political science. And, much to my surprise, at the conclusion of those first 4 years, there weren't a whole lot of opportunities in front of me as a political science major.
Yeah.
And so,
Was there something about that like intrigued you, or was it just kind of like you didn't know what to do, so you
no,
chose that, or like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's it. It was sort of a default thing.
yeah.
It appealed to me in terms of the different, political theory and some constitutional law stuff. And I enjoyed that and sort of understanding the way the world works or why it works the way it works.
Yep.
But my dad said, "So what are you going to do?" And I said, I was thinking about culinary school. I have a lifelong passion with food and restaurants and hospitality and that kind of thing, and still do and enjoy that kind of thing. And he said, it's a really good hobby. That was sort of his initial response, and it's consistent with his, personality and the way that he looks at the world. And so I said, okay, well, I didn't really know what to do, and that's how I ended up in law school. I took the LSAT just sort of as a default and did okay. Applied to 3 schools, Illinois being one of them, and ended up going to law school without any sort of meaningful direction as to what I was going to do after that. I think
Yeah.
that, one of the things I knew I wanted to do was just make a difference, right? Whatever that means. I mean, to me, it meant both personally and professionally,
Yeah.
trying to have a positive impact. My dad is as a judge, was a public servant. He's a military guy. He served in Vietnam, and it was always a important part of the Duncan household here in Glen Ellen growing up was public service and
Yep.
being generous with, if you didn't have the money, your time, and if you had the money and time, then both. And so I knew I wanted to make a difference, but it wasn't probably until my second year of law school that I started gravitating towards personal injury work. And so I ended up um, clerking at a bigger personal injury firm downtown. And it was really eye-opening in a lot of different ways, um, but primarily in terms of being able to make a difference,
Yeah.
right? Not only in the lives of your clients on an individual basis, but also just in the community.
Yeah.
I think plaintiffs' lawyers, um, a lot of them at least, and certainly the ones that mentored me, are extremely generous with their time. They're involved in their communities and sort of laid out, or maybe not laid out, but endorsed sort of the roadmap that my dad established early on.
Hmm.
And I sort of, that's what I ended up wanting to do.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things about personal injury work that appeal to me. I like the competition of it,
Hmm.
particularly on the plaintiff side. We don't get paid unless we're successful in terms of prosecuting the case. I like helping people and representing people. I like educating them regarding the system that they're engaging in. I like the empathy. As I go on in my career, I represent folks that have encountered more and more serious situations,
Yeah.
the nature of the injuries, that sort of thing. And so I like the empathy side of it and the counseling part of it. Um, so there's a lot of it that appeals to me. And
Yeah,
certainly
and that
it's,
problem solving, and every case is unique, I'm sure. And so you've got to, figure out how to put the pieces to the puzzle, together. And
that's exactly it. I mean, there's a number of sort of skills that come into play, but as a plaintiff's lawyer, and I tell folks, my clients this and other people this, as a plaintiff's lawyer, my goal is to get a case to the finish line as quickly as I can,
Mhm.
right? Um, as opposed to generating hours. I don't bill by the hour. I get a percentage of whatever I ultimately recover at the end. And so I want to find the shortest distance between point A and point B
Yeah.
to get there. And it's really to the benefit of my clients as well, um, because they're dealing with something serious. And while I don't get paid until the end, certainly they don't get compensated until the end.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we sort of keep at the forefront of our of our minds as we prosecute these cases, at least at my firm.
Yeah. And I mean, I think in a lot of cases, I think that, you're dealing with in situations where, the people just don't know, they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
They're not obviously an attorney. They may or may not know, somebody might be liable for however they were, impacted by an event. They may not know that there's insurance that's in place. You know what I mean? Even if they at an optic level, just see a company and they're like, oh, there's nothing there. They don't realize that there's an insurance company behind it that is there to back them up. Any number of different things.
Yeah.
The average person walking down the street just, has no idea.
Yeah.
And so the idea, I love that idea of being able to help, people that otherwise, wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah. No, these folks, they find themselves in situations oftentimes, most times through no fault of their own, and they don't know how to get off of square one. They don't know which direction to turn, or even to begin to navigate, the process that's there in front of them. So, that's where we step in right away. And the idea is that we educate them regarding what the process entails, what we can do to help them. And ultimately it's just leveling the playing field against whoever might be on the other side, whether it's a healthcare system or an auto insurance carrier or whoever it may be. So, there's some value in that. And I enjoy, sort of what we're doing here, right? Listening to people's stories, figuring out who they are, what makes them tick. It's a really, really wonderful byproduct of what we do.
Yep. And I noticed, I think it was on the website actually, some of the, civic things that you're involved with are, the Glen Ellen Food Pantry. I think I saw you're even a board member.
Yeah.
And then I know you've been involved in the local election process here, things like that. I guess I didn't put the pieces together that's part of like the family tree, if you will, going back to what you talked about with your dad and kind of setting that example.
Yeah, I think it's just, stewardship, right? I was born and raised here in Glen Ellen. I love Glen Ellen. I've got 3 younger sisters and they all went different directions and live all over the country now. And they always ask, why did you stay in Glen Ellen? And it's quite candidly my favorite place in the world.
Yeah.
It's where I feel most comfortable. It's where I feel at home. My parents are still here in town. And so, in addition to wanting to help make a difference and a positive contribution, I want to be a good steward of the things that I care about. So,
no, that's amazing. So a couple of things I wanted to, double click on, and we've kind of been on the surface of it a little bit with, just empathy and things like that. But, one of the things that I found over the course of our friendship, and I can think of a couple of different circumstances, but like, there's just like a genuine sense of right and wrong. Right.
Yeah.
And, I think that that's something that is sort of like born into somebody. Right. And it's just like, there's no in between. There's right and there's wrong,
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like that a lot, but not everybody in this world is. I think I might be reading incorrectly, but I think that in many ways you see the world that way. And I think that helps you as like a superpower for the line of work that you're in, and that you're, charged with, working with these plaintiffs in these situations where you're like, look, there is a right and there is a wrong here. And I am here to be your advocate to get this to go the way we want it to go.
No, that's right.
Where does that come from? Like, where does that?
Yeah, I think everybody growing up tests their boundaries and understands what makes them work or what, which direction they want to go. And for me, anytime I tried to, not do the right thing or maybe, told us a lie or was dishonest or tried to take a shortcut or whatever, 2 things were apparent. Number 1, the guilt was too much for me to handle, and number 2, without exception, the juice just wasn't worth the squeeze. And so I think in my mind it is binary, right? The right way and the wrong way. And so we always try to do the right thing and do the best that we can, and it's the way that I can live with myself. And it's in this business, there's a lot in the business I'm in. There's a lot riding on sort of what I do, how I perform, the path that I take, the decisions I make, and there's a lot of corners that can be cut, and it's just not the way I choose to do it. I like to think that I choose the right path, or perhaps the narrower path when it comes to those decisions, but it allows me to sort of look myself in the mirror
Yep.
and look at my boys and know that I'm setting the example I want to set. And, um, it's not always the easy way, but it's just the way I've chosen to do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Now you mentioned, sort of growing up, um, that path was illuminated for you, so to speak, or whatever. But like, you find that you said you had three sisters, or you find that are they kind of similar natured to you? Is it just kind of like this is what we do in the family, kind of thing, or like what's
Yeah.
your
No, 100%.
yeah,
They're all very, very different.
yep,
My oldest sister is sort of an interesting mix of different things. She's a hockey coach. She was a missionary in the past. She's run her own hairstyling business, and she's constantly trying to help people and make a difference and be involved in that sort of thing. My middle sister is in finance,
yep,
and again is constantly contributing and being a good steward to the organizations that she's involved in. And then my
yep,
youngest sister is a chaplain with a university-based hospital system on the East Coast.
okay,
And so she's, again, sort of talking to people and working with people at their lowest points or
yeah,
some of their lowest points and helping them navigate from a sort of faith-based perspective,
yeah,
the hurdles they're confronting. So we're super different, but we all have a common thread,
yeah.
you know.
Oh yeah, I could see that. And even in how you're describing it, like totally makes sense. Love that. Um, I think that one of the things that strikes me, and I don't want to, paint with too, broad of a brush here or anything like that, but like, um, I think in a world where, attorneys, right, always sort of like people are always looking skeptical at attorneys, right, in
Yeah,
terms of like their motivations for why they do what they do. It's all about the money, and they're all
sure.
you know, they're all chasing this thing, for their own interests, not the interests of the plaintiffs, which is what we've been talking about. Like, how do you, from a communication standpoint, or outwardly, or whatever it is that you do, right? How do you feel like you try to stand out in a crowd? I mean, I know there's probably the things like, look, I say what I mean, I practice what I preach, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But is there like, I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. So like, how do you stand out in a room? You know what I mean? Or when you're talking with a potential client or something like that, like, you know,
So sort of twofold, right? I mean, when I'm explaining it to clients, it's letting them know that we're on the same team,
yeah,
right? We're contributing in different ways to the same team. I always talk about being in a canoe together and we're both paddling.
yeah,
And the more I get for them, the more I get for me. And the sooner I get it, we both take, right? So I'm incentivized naturally just based on the structure of the system to do that,
yeah,
and to maximize, right? And then, but just generally speaking, in terms of the perception of lawyers, it's just doing everything I can to live and lead by example.
yeah,
And there's no doubt that my piece of the pie is a lot bigger than I deserve. And so, knowing that and realizing that, I think I do everything I can to contribute wherever I can, whether
yeah,
it's, with my time and the various organizations I'm involved in here in town with, various charitable endeavors, that sort of thing.
yeah,
The last thing I ever want to be known as is somebody who didn't, contribute or
yeah,
didn't give commensurate with, what they've been fortunate enough to achieve.
yeah,
And I mean, I'm a product of my environment, my opportunities, right? And,
yeah,
and I had very little control over 90% or more of those two things, and I'm very very well aware of it. And so I work very hard to sort of honor what I've been fortunate enough to do and experience. And, it's whatever, 95% other people, 5% me. And that might be generous in terms of the allocation to me.
Yeah. No, I love how, I love how you've worded that in terms of, you get back, potentially even more than, you could possibly receive, you know what I mean? Like just, wherever you see an opportunity. And, even as I say that now, I'm thinking back to instances where I know that you've been involved with things here in town. Like a lot of people listening may not be from Glen Ellen or
Sure,
or
yeah.
whatever, but like I can, authentically, state that like, different things that have come up in the community, fundraiser support, things like that, that I know you've been a big part of and things like that, that I think that I would validate.
I
Um,
tell my wife and boys, like, our lives start, we live on a corner, and I say it starts here on this corner and it moves out in circles and it doesn't get too far beyond that,
yeah.
And so, these are the people I care about and the lives that I, care about and want to contribute to. So
Yep.
do everything I can.
Love it. Um, the second thing I was thinking of, in terms of, kind of talk points is there's obviously a lot of attorneys in the world. The question is, at some point in time, you decided to go from working for somebody else to working on your own. Like, how did that, get started? And, what was sort of your thought process in that? And,
Sure. So, going back to the firm that I clerked at, the larger firm, I knew it wasn't where I wanted to be, just because the opportunity to um, be the one in charge of cases just was too far off in the future
yep.
in terms of what I wanted. So I started my career practicing career at a small plaintiff's firm, and then moved to another small plaintiff's firm. And by doing that, I sort of saw how the business was run. I saw how to be mindful of spending on cases, how to work up a case in a conservative way or a cost effective way, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And along those lines, being able to put the work into the case and sort of boots on the ground and digging in and whatever. So the second small firm I worked for, there were two partners. They ended up splitting up. And I reached a crossroads at that time where I could either go with one of the partners and sort of endorse his vision of what he wanted the firm to be, or I could start my own. I had been, we'd gotten married maybe 2 years before. Had moved to Glen Ellen, didn't have any kids yet.
Mhm.
And so like timing is everything,
Yeah.
And it just worked out from a timing perspective. My wife's also a lawyer. And so we had enough financial support in terms of her job so that I could take this chance. And so I started my firm with 14 cases and a few bucks. And crossed fingers and it's worked out.
Yeah. I think that was one of the things that, over the course of our friendship and just talking or whatever, that I don't know what it was, but I didn't put it together. But like you personally are at risk, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, obviously you're putting in your time, but like, research and resources and experts and, all those things. I mean, you're
Yeah.
fronting those bills, right? At the end of the day. And I don't know what it was, but like, I didn't even think about that,
Yeah, no, I mean, you get used to it over time, and certainly, lawyers as a group are generally risk averse. I think plaintiffs' lawyers are different in that regard.
Yeah.
But yeah, up until recently, and I mean, within like the last 90 days, it's been all, my money out there in terms of supporting these cases. So we have to have a vested interest and like a real level of confidence to pursue these cases.
Yeah.
And we only get that money back if we're successful. So, but yeah, I mean, my wife has been unbelievably supportive and done a tremendous amount to make sure that we were able to do this. But again, it's, the timing of everything, kids, being sort of established and having already bought a home and sort of checked a few boxes because, if that window hadn't been there, I don't know when it may have opened again.
Yep.
But But I had a vision, a sort of view of the way I wanted to do things and the way I wanted to run a firm and that sort of thing. And it's been great. I mean, it's worked out
Yeah.
in terms of being able to continue and grow and build. And, I take a second to think about it, like getting ready for, this and talking to you. And it's remarkable in terms of how it's grown, but
Yeah.
it's, due to a lot of people.
How was your vision of what you wanted to do with Duncan Law Group different than maybe the prior expressions of what you were doing before?
It was just doing it consistent with who I am and doing things the right way. And not necessarily that any of the firms I worked at were doing them the wrong way, but just, being sort of true to who I was. I wanted to be the guy that's putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah.
I wanted to have autonomy in terms of the cases that I decided to pick.
Like the picking the cases in some ways. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing.
And we don't, we certainly take cases that maybe, in retrospect we shouldn't or whatever. But, I have it's hard for me to turn down a case involving any sort of kid, anybody who's been in the military, that sort of thing. I know that these folks need somebody to lead them through the process, and so I'm privileged to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so I take that responsibility seriously. But I wanted to be able to, pick the cases I wanted to get involved in, pursue them the way I wanted to. I tell people all the time, like putting a case together is a lot like putting a puzzle together.
Yeah.
And usually there's just one captain of the ship that's deciding which pieces go where and how they fit together. And so I wanted to be that guy. And I've never had a true partner.
Mhm.
It's always just been me, and it allows me to make those decisions and be nimble and pivot and get involved in stuff that that I want to get involved in.
Yeah.
Right. So
You have choice.
yeah. Yeah.
You
And
have
so
choice.
that sort of led to the development of the class action practice and getting involved in that. And, again, just allocating time, making sure that I'm, attending ball games and being able to go to, food pantry meetings and
Yep.
other meetings and things like that. So, but it's been a wild ride for sure.
Yeah.
Because lawyers are not business people, right? I mean, what's the joke? Like,
Right.
if you're risk averse and don't know the hard sciences, what do? You go to law school. And so, like,
I've not heard that one. But.
yeah, but probably, even more so with me, just like a political science background without any foresight that this would ever happen. My gosh, I wish I would have taken some accounting classes or some finance classes or some business organization classes or whatever, just so I knew what I was doing a little bit more in terms of the business side of things. I've got a pretty good handle on the law, but the business side of things is a different story.
Absolutely. I mean, you alluded to the growth, though. Yeah, I think you said how many attorneys now?
So there's a total of 6 of us right now. We've been as high as 8. We'll probably need a couple more. So it probably qualifies as a mid-size plaintiff's firm.
Yeah.
At least in this area. So it's we're busy and we've got cases all over the country.
Yeah.
We're working on meaningful, significant cases. Certainly on the personal injury side and then on the class action side as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Any idea for, futuristically where you want to go? I mean, is it wanting to continue to grow it or you want to be more selective with the types of things that you're doing? I mean, I think there, over the course of time, when I talk to people, I think there's different approaches always, bigger isn't always necessarily better.
No, it definitely isn't. And I was just talking to somebody about it today. Like, we have the perfectly scalable business, right? I mean, it makes sense on paper. The hard part is finding the people that endorse sort of the vision of our firm and embody the characteristics of our firm.
Yeah.
And do the legal work at the level that's expected.
Yeah.
So right now we have a great team, great lawyers. I think they all fit the mold of what we're trying to do, but it's not easy, adding somebody and making sure it's the right fit. So, if it makes sense, I think expanding and scaling up.
Yeah.
But we just need to do it the right way and with the people that make sense. And that's been the challenge, is just finding the right people to fit.
Well, it's interesting you pointed out, I can't remember what the joke was, but about, conservatism, conservatism, you know what I mean, is like a thing. But like, I feel like the common thread among like every entrepreneur is like this desire to, I don't know if it's control, I guess it's control in a way, but it's like a desire to directly impact one's outcome,
Yeah.
right? Like, meaning like, I want to go to bed at night knowing that I succeeded or I failed, right?
100%.
And I can point the finger at me one way or the other, right?
Yep.
Um, and whereas a lot of people, like, I think another word would be like safety, right? They want stability in their job and their paycheck and, all those kind of things. Like, but it takes, I think, people that are comfortable living out on the, out on the frontier, if you will, right?
Yep.
Because like what you do at the end of the day, you're an awesome attorney, right? But you're also a business development person, right? You're out,
Yeah.
actively involved, and you have networks of friends and colleagues and, uh, classmates and things like that that you're actively keeping in touch with. That's a piece to the puzzle. There's also the running the business part. That's a piece to the puzzle. Like
Yeah.
there's so much that goes into it beyond just being a lawyer. And I think one of those things is like, you can have all that. I mean, I'm not an attorney, right? But like, I know what I do for work, and it's not that different in that, you can have people that are excellent and have specific skills,
Mm-hmm.
but the art, I think, the art of it is to take all the information, right, and synthesize it into a story,
Yeah.
right, or into this is what we're going to do,
Yeah.
um, and I always, when people ask me, I'm like, think about like, if we're talking about building a house, right? I'm not the plumber. I'm not the drywall guy. I'm not the builder in general. I'm the architect. Like, I want to think about what are the conditions of this building and how do I
Right.
build it for maximum efficiency. In your case, how do I build this case,
Yeah.
right? Given, the body of evidence, the law, what it says, all those kind of things. And that's a skill. I feel like it's almost like an artistic skill to be able to pull all those pieces of information together.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's being able to see the puzzle and in all of its various pieces, and understanding what, when they're all put together, what the picture's going to look like, and
Yeah.
and how it's going to
Like, you can see it before it happens.
yes, and that's yeah, it's one of the things I'm good at. I mean, there's a lot of things I'm not, but being able to see a case and put a case together and understand. I mean, really just from the jump, right? As soon as I talk to somebody about what their potential case is, understanding, where we may be able to draw evidence from to support that case.
Yeah.
Where we're going to put our resources, the experts we're going to hire, the contributions they're going to make, to make the case as strong as we can. And then just cutting through the stuff that doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all these cases come with a lot of sideshows and a lot of, different stuff going on. But if you can just identify a theory early on and pursue that theory, is beneficial and again, helps you get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. And so I
Yeah.
think that's, as a lawyer, I think that's one of the things that I'm pretty good at.
Yeah, you got a good filter for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but just, but it's, I mean, like, it's a team effort, right?
Yep.
And so, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I'm just not good at. And so I've got a lot of guys on the team that are, fill those roles and bring a lot to the table in terms
Yeah.
of what they're able to do and what they're really good at. And it's sort of finding this complementary skill set that allows us to succeed.
Yeah.
So,
14 years plus out on your own, right? Every entrepreneur has got all the war stories and like what are the things that you have experienced that you didn't know that you were like hiccups along the way, or life lessons you've learned, or if you were to tell your younger self something, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess tell my younger self. I think ignorance is bliss, right?
Yeah.
If I had any inclination as to how challenging it would be, or the ebbs and the flows, or the ups and downs, I maybe wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Right.
But I found it to be an unbelievably rewarding experience to take something from nothing and turn it into a respected firm, and I think doing work that has generated some, the respect of my peers, to the benefit of the clients, everything else. So, um, like I said, we just got a line of credit for the first time like 90 days ago. And so, I mean, riding those waves, the financial waves, and, going to trial or having, cases go the distance with that much on the line,
Mhm.
has been unbelievable,
Yeah.
and really required us to perform um, at a high level. But it's yeah, I don't know. I mean, what do they say? Like it's about the journey, not the destination,
Yeah.
right? And that's very, very true in my case.
Yeah.
Taking something and building it and making it has been so much more gratifying than whatever goes on now in terms of the whatever I'm taking out of it, or financial benefits or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, from 14 cases to, sometimes we'll have 225 cases in the office.
Wow.
All these, lawyers working on meaningful stuff. Um, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, I argued a case in the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, which is one step below the Supreme Court. We just filed a petition for writ of certiorari with the U.S. Supreme Court a few weeks ago.
Wow.
I can't believe we're working on some of the stuff that we're working on, and we're doing it, I think, at a really high level, which I'm just really proud of.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
people also like, what are you most proud of, or what, and I think making payroll every 2 weeks for
Yeah.
14 years is one of the things I'm most proud of, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of people out there that sort of depend on me and what we're doing. And um, so it's been wild. But again, I wish I had a accounting or finance class or two under my belt.
You should require it, right?
No, they should. They should. They probably did.
Yeah.
I may have even taken the classes and forgot I won. But no, it's yeah, I don't know. It's been a great ride so far.
Yeah. Well, plenty more to go, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's I appreciate you, sharing that. And yeah, like I said, I mean, I think every entrepreneur has got, sort of the war stories. And like, I even think about my own journey. I'm now, well, I guess 10 years officially, legally. I hadn't been doing it full time that long, but, this year is our 10-year anniversary. And I think about, flipping the script on that. Somebody asked me that question, like, what were the road bumps along the way? And, what would you take back or tell your younger self? I think I agree. Like, I mean, I would look back and be like, man, those were some painful moments in time, kind of thing. And like, but like, I don't know if there's another way to do it other than finding your way,
Yeah, for
and,
sure.
and like, I just don't know that like everything's going to be perfect. It's almost like raising a kid or something like that, where you're like, they're not just going to like breeze through life with no challenges that they face. I mean, it's part of what is formative,
Yeah, for sure.
in you as an individual, but also as a company, why you do what you do and how you do what you do is the product of the experiences that you've had.
100%. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like, what would you tell your younger self? And you having been through it, it's like, work hard
Yeah.
every day. Don't get too discouraged, right? It's obviously natural to have ups and downs, but like I tell people all the time, like, embrace the uncertainty. If you can embrace uncertainty and if you can acknowledge failure,
Yep.
like those are two things that I think get you a really long way in
Yep.
terms of being able to persevere, right? Because it's all about perseverance. It's
Yep.
just sort of waking up in one foot after another, in front of the other, day over day over day, um, learning the lessons that are there to be learned. And so, I've had, I was thinking about it getting ready for our conversation today, just sort of the idea of what has been more gratifying, or what has been more helpful to me as I've gone through this 14-year span. And it's probably just acknowledging and recognizing the failures or the shortcomings, how to do it differently, and then building on that and learning from it, right? Instead of getting discouraged, or instead of throwing in the towel, or not giving yourself grace. I mean, we all have bad days.
Yep.
And so it's just saying, okay, like, what are we going to do again? Or the next time we encounter this, and how are we going to be better?
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I wonder, like, you hear the whatever the stats are, like 95 or 90% or whatever that is of businesses fail, right? Like, I wonder if you took that 90%, let's just say it's 90%, and you carved it up into businesses that were meant to fail, or, they just didn't have, they had a bad product or a bad
right.
whatever, like it was never going to work. Or businesses that could have succeeded had they just stayed with it.
Yeah.
Right. Because, like, again, you kind of got to have thick skin. You got to have the ability to just be like, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to let this be what defines me.
Right.
Right. This is a bump in the road, and tomorrow will be better than today.
Yeah. No, and that's the takeaway, right? And so it's what I try to focus on with my boys.
Yep.
And, striking out once, not a big deal. Striking out 10 times, not a big deal.
Right.
You just got to keep at it. And I mean, and again, do the right thing, work hard, good things will happen.
Yep. Absolutely. I was thinking about, like, a little bit topically here, because I get asked this question quite a bit too. And I was curious for your read, given your, industry is not my industry, but it's similar, right? It's professional services, right? But we're talking about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And I'm not like an expert on artificial intelligence by any stretch of the imagination. But there's a lot of chatter out there about, the automation of a lot of, like, accounting tasks and things like that. And I've heard lawyers sort of in the same, you know, uh, vein, talking about, like, how, AI is going to, do a lot of things and whatever. I'm just curious, how are you seeing it in the world of law? Right. And how are you either hearing about other people's views as well? And then just anything you might be doing to prepare for it, or maybe it's something that you don't feel like you need to prepare for.
No, I mean, I think it's got the potential to dramatically change the landscape of the way that law is practiced today.
Yeah.
The firm I initially worked at, the owner of that firm was famous for saying, learn by osmosis, right? So be around, watch what happens, listen to how things happen, listen to conversations, that sort of thing. And just, you're not the man in the arena, but at least be in the arena to. So I think that the use of AI is got an opportunity to sort of cut that that avenue off for young lawyers, right? And it is a big deal. I'm involved at the College of Law at U of I. It's come up there in terms of, what's a young associate going to do? I mean, if we can have document review and sort of, the manual labor, so to speak, of a case done by AI, what role are they going to play?
Yeah.
It's almost like they come into the game, or there's only an opening in the game, or in the profession, at year 5, 6, 7, or 8, as opposed to, the first number of years that you would be out of law school. So, I mean, it's both sides of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I can have AI, or utilize AI to go through thousands and thousands of documents extremely efficiently and quickly, it's a great benefit to a firm my size, and very much evens the playing field against some of the, the defendants that I go up against. Our class action practice focuses on insurance companies on the other side. We have a niche that we have had some success in. And so, we'll get these document dumps of hundreds of thousands of pages. And so AI can be extremely useful in terms of helping us get through those, sort those documents, identify what documents are, sort of relevant to the issues that are at the center of the case. And so it might help me, but at the bigger firms, where a lot of, lawyers go to start their careers, um, they may not have those opportunities. Those jobs may go away. And
Yeah.
so it's like, well, what do you do? Where do you go? Where do you put young lawyers to learn?
Yeah. Yeah. And if they can do their job with the click of a button, they're not doing the hard work it takes to be the person that's pulling the puzzle together. Going back to our conversation earlier, like I think it's the same thing in accounting. I think it's the same thing in a lot of, finance, you know what I mean? And a lot of different things where, those early years, I mean, I joke about this now, but I still remember back at Arthur Anderson doing what was known as footing, which was a fancy word for getting out a calculator and making sure if they were going to submit a report to a client, when you added up the numbers in the chart, it added to the total.
To the exact, yeah, right.
I mean, and it was literally sitting there with a calculator. And this was in the days that we should have been beyond that in a way, right? But, doing that repetitive, stuff, taught me a lot of things, even today, I think are core skills of mine, just in terms of like conscientiousness and things like that. Like if I put my name on, a body of work, you can bet that I dotted every I and crossed every T. I've made mistakes in my life, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty airtight.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that those are formative experiences where you're learning, and now you're outsourcing that to a machine. And so, if you go later to, okay, now we got to build our case, I just don't see where a machine sees the disparate pieces and pulls them together into the narrative of the story,
Yeah, no, it's going to create sort of a disjointed process.
Yeah.
And we're just at the beginning stages of it, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error. There already has been trial and error with AI and its integration with the practice of law. There's been stories out there about people using AI to write briefs, and they haven't been accurate and they haven't been airtight and not certainly what you would expect. So I think people are going to struggle for a time to find a balance, but then once they figure out how to integrate it into whatever the practice is, right? Whether it's a practice my size, a bigger firm, whatever, I think those efficiencies are going to drive out opportunity, right? And so a lot of your detail-oriented, behavior as it relates to even bigger picture stuff or the stuff you're dealing with now, I'm sure, is in part grounded in sitting there at night going through these numbers, and it becomes habit. If you don't have the opportunity to develop that habit, it's not something you just pick up. You're like, oh, I'm going to really drill down and make sure this gets done right.
Yeah.
So I think the world's changing for sure, and I think it's.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I haven't, but I'm just thinking of examples here in my head. But like, there's obviously a drafting of a contract, right? I think about that, for example. Let's say it's a lease agreement or something like that. You can go into ChatGPT right now and say, "Can you please draw me up a lease agreement between blah 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 and blah blah blah?" And I've seen it and done it, right? And the problem though is in most cases, right? These are two people with competing interests that are entering into a contract together. So there is no sort of tool that will write that contract to be good for both parties, right? You know what I mean? It's something like, even it could be the clause around the limitation of liability or which state, you know what I mean? That would, they'd have precedents, the laws that'll apply, right? And so like, I think about that and I'm like, yeah, it takes you this far, but it doesn't go all the way. In your line of work, I mean, I mean, I think it as a tool can be extraordinarily helpful, but the circumstances of every single one of your cases are so unique. I mean, even if you're
Right.
talking broadly about car accidents or something like that,
Sure.
like there's a million different variables that have nothing to do with AI that could be part of that, that
Yeah.
story.
I mean, yeah, our business it's not document driven. I mean,
Yeah,
there are some documents, obviously, in some cases are more document driven than others, but like it's very much um outside of the parameters of AI.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So you're talking to witnesses, you're capturing their testimony,
right.
that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see. I think it'll probably affect my area of practice, at least the personal injury and medical malpractice and wrongful death side of things less than it will the class action side.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, there's so much going on and it's so different, right? So when I started in law school, it was, even electronic research was just sort of starting.
yeah,
So most of it was going to the law library, going to books. And it's like looking in a glossary, right? So legal research through books is like looking through a glossary. And you find keywords and you go to the next book and then you find, and it naturally corrects itself and you find where you need to go. But by doing that, you're exposed to so many other concepts and you remember all these other things. And then we went to electronic discovery, right? And so you're
yeah.
just typing in like a Google search and it
It's
takes
like in
you
that
straight
Westlaw,
there. Yeah.
that
So
Westlaw.
Westlaw,
Yeah,
Lexis, or whatever.
yeah,
Um, and, uh, and even that was a significant shift in terms of how the efficiency of electronic research compared to book research.
yeah,
Um, but you miss something, right? You miss that sort of path that you go through in doing the research and learning along the way, as
yeah,
opposed to just landing in the spot that you're hoping to find.
yeah.
And so,
And it's almost like you got to kind of know what you're looking for because even in the process of that search, you're going to find that there's stuff that's relevant and there's
oh,
more stuff that's
100%.
not relevant,
Yeah, I mean,
to,
you take a detour and you find something that you otherwise wouldn't have known of or
yeah,
whatever. And with the electronic stuff, you sort of land where you land, and you're not casting that wide of a net, right? So you're
yeah,
not figuring all that out. And so I think that's made a difference. Now, we're going into this AI time and how that's going to be integrated into the practice. And I think it really has an impact on young lawyers and
yeah,
their development as lawyers and the
right.
way that they see things and are able to do things. And, we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, even more than, maybe it just calls up more of that osmosis stuff,
Yeah. No.
that you talked about is that like, hey, in a world where a lot of this stuff is being increasingly automated, your ability to be in the room and feel the room and know when, you know, Bobby's, hey, that doesn't sound right. Like, we need to dig in on that further. Well, what was that, you know what I mean? There's a learning process. And so being together, I think is all the more important, I would think.
No, it's huge. Uh, based on my involvement down at U of I and just sort of whether it's in the community or friends or whatever, talking to young people who either want to become lawyers or in law school or young lawyers, it's never been easier to separate yourself from your peers.
Yeah.
I somewhat jokingly say, like, if you show up at 8 and leave at 6, you're going to be there before everybody and after everybody, and you're going to be around people who are also sort of committed to the practice and there and doing it.
Yeah.
And if you combine that with just raising your hand, and volunteering to get into the mix, I mean, you're going to be on a path to success just based on those two things alone.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it takes experience and time. And that's the hard thing, right? I mean, we're in a society now where everybody wants immediate success.
Yeah.
If you're not seeing it and feeling it and seeing or reaping the rewards or the benefits of it immediately, it's like on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And this is, sort of like, I'm sure with your business, takes time. You gotta put in the time and it's a long run and it's, years. And so I'm not, that's my concern, right? Like,
Yep.
where are we going as a profession if people aren't willing to invest the time and the effort and the energy to, number one, become good at it, but number two, sort of see the fruits of their labor that could be years down the road, even decades down the road, right?
Well, I think the world has a way of figuring that out, right? I mean, since the
For
beginning
sure.
of the time, it's been the same story over and over, is that the people that work hard and
Cream rises to the top, right?
cream rises to the top. And that will continue to be the case. But if somebody is turning in by chance and wants to get a hold of you, they want to talk shop or, for any reason, what are the best ways to, get in touch with you?
Probably just either visit the website, which is duncanlawgroup.com. My email is on there. It's just my initials, RRD at duncanlawgroup.com. And those are probably the best ways to get in touch with me, or that's probably the best way to get in touch with me directly.
Okay.
And I'm, more than happy to talk to anybody anytime about, any of the above, whether it's, somebody who's thinking about getting into plaintiff's work or has questions about, what I do at my firm versus what they might be doing at theirs. Like I said, I try to be as generous with my time and knowledge and know-how as possible. So if you look for the best for people, it has a way of coming around for you.
Yep, absolutely. All right, you ready for the hard part?
Let's do it.
Okay, so this is just something we do for fun. There's no right or wrong answers, but we have our final 3 questions, right?
Yep.
These are not, literal in a sense that, like first question I'll give you is, what are the top 3 rock and roll bands of all time? You may not be a rock and roll person, but you may be, or whatever person, a pop music person or whatever, reggae, who knows? But whatever your interests are, whatever, I just always like to curiously ask the question, what are the top 3 bands of all time?
Top 3 bands. So I've got 2 immediately, and then the third is sort of a moving target, right? So it's Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band.
Okay.
Top of the list.
Boss has made the list a couple of times.
Yeah, outstanding. Van Halen's number 2.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I think that might be Van Halen's first, but
well, it's a shame.
I'm the number 5 of 6, and my brother was like a Van Halen nut back in the day, so I know Van Halen very well.
So, and then you get to number 3, and it's really sort of a toss-up. There's a number of bands that are in the mix there, whether it's, AC/DC or The Doors or, I'd even say the Beach Boys deserve to be in the conversation.
All right.
So I don't have a firm third, but I have the first 2 slots filled.
What Springsteen? Tell me more there. How do you vibe with him, so to speak?
I couldn't tell you exactly how I first got into him, but I think I've probably seen like 10 of his shows.
Okay.
My wife and I went and saw him on Springsteen on Broadway. I don't know, just something about him. I love the sound. I love the band. So yeah.
I have never actually been to one of the shows, but that is a huge mess. I gotta make an effort because I am a fan. Probably not at my top 3, but I do love Bruce and the band. I've got like DVDs of the concerts, and just like the energy is just off the charts.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's definitely a performer.
Yeah.
And the autobiography is fantastic. I don't know if you read that one.
Yeah, I have, and it's tremendous.
Yeah, or biography. I don't know if he wrote it or not. I don't remember, but it's really good.
Yeah.
So, all right, sweet. And by the way, I just thought of this, but you mentioned AC/DC. You would be shocked at the number of people that bring AC/DC up in the top 3.
They're a great band.
Yeah,
I was trying to pump up my 7-year-old on our way to basketball on Saturday, and we got in the car, and he was sort of ho-humming, and I put on Thunderstruck, and turned it up, and we got to where he's playing, and I get out of the car, and I said, "So what do you think?" He's like, "It was okay." I was like, "Man, talk about not having the desired effect." But I was pumped. I was ready to go.
Yeah. My high school basketball, varsity basketball, that was our entrance song.
Can't beat it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. All right. Second question: which annual holiday is the best one? And we get a lot of different answers here. So whatever.
I'm a Glen Ellen guy, man. 4th of July.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a very common one.
Yep.
In these parts. It is literally the best. Like I wouldn't not go anywhere else. And in fact, people should come vacation in Glen Ellen to hang out for the 4th of July.
I mean, I've spent my first 18 years here. Then I was in Champaign for 7 years, and then lived in the city for a handful of years, but have been here otherwise. And while I was in the city, I'd bring people out, and a number of them live here now because of their experience on the 4th of July. It's as you know, it's that good.
It is that good. It is that good. All right. This is an interesting one. I'm curious about this one for you. If you weren't doing what you're currently doing for work, what is a completely unrelated career that you can see yourself enjoying and thriving in?
Going back to cooking and food, it would be something with cooking and food, whether it's being a chef or a food writer or something along those lines. I mean, I just love food and cooking and that sort of thing. Yeah.
What? So, do you guys cook a ton in the home, or are you like more like, hey, we cook a little bit in the home and we like to go experience different cuisines at different restaurants, that kind of thing?
It's probably both. We try to cook as much as possible at the house. We're just both busy, and I think my wife would say the same thing. We just don't get a chance to do it as much as we'd like.
Yep.
But I mean, we'll travel to go check out restaurants and that sort of thing. I listen to food blogs and podcasts and everything else. And what did I listen to the other day? Christopher Kimball of Milk Street has a podcast, and I think he was talking about Thai food and different curries and stuff like that. And so I can listen for 45 minutes on stuff like that. So,
all right.
Yeah, it's so something food related or.
Now, are there any particular styles of food that are more near and dear to you, or is it just anything?
So I like folks who can make simple stuff, 3 to 7 ingredients that, really shine. And so that appeals to me quite a bit. So along those lines, sort of like French brasserie cooking is super appealing to me.
Yep.
Just it's simple stuff. And I could talk, if you wanted to do another hour on food, I can talk about food and the folks I sort of pay attention to and follow. But yeah, that's where I would have been.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, I've greatly enjoyed this. I thank you tremendously for coming on and sharing your wisdom. I thought it was as insightful as I thought it was going to be. Which is very, and I think anybody that tunes in is definitely going to enjoy. So I appreciate you sharing a bit about you personally, and then your firm, and can't thank you enough for your time. So.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This has been fun.
Absolutely.
All right,
Bobby Duncan.
Yeah,
there we go.
Thanks, John.